let's just randomly check out a little stop here, see what we have here, because hey, when you're riding in the country, you definitely want to do some adventuring. Oh, look at this, look at this. What do we have here? I hear a noise. Oh, wow. Wowee, look at that. Don't fall into the gorge. Wow. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Here we are. Finally out of the city on my Moto Guzzi Stelvio. Finally got the adventure bike out to have some adventures. Beautiful out here. So welcome back, guys. It's been a little while. I've relocated to my cabin for a little while. Gonna ride these roads up here and just have some good old time up here riding these beautiful roads. But first, I gotta tell you about a couple of test rides that I did. I rode a couple of Hondas, and recently I rode a Honda Rebel 500, and I'll tell you all about it right now, so stay tuned. Alright, so you really sit in this bike as opposed to on it. The seat height is super low, so it is good for people of all heights. I find my hip angle at 5'11", almost 6 feet 2, 5'11 and a half or so, a little closed on this. I got tight hips though, I've been running recently. But I think bigger people would still be fairly comfortable on this bike, and it certainly doesn't lack power. Yeah, these 500s, you know, people say, okay, 47 horsepower. They are, whoa, mouse. They are definitely powerful enough. That's all you need. I mean, we are going a pretty decent speed here, and this thing is not struggling at all. I'm in 6th gear too, and it rolls on pretty well. Like, here we are, we're at 85, I'm gonna roll on in 6th gear, and we're at 100, right there. It's that quick. This bike has no problem keeping up at this speed. Is it going to explosively pass a car at this speed? Probably not. Maybe if you shift down, we'll shift down here. It's still not explosively fast, but in 4th gear, it accelerates pretty well. And it's very smooth. The big fat tires, yeah, they take a little bit more muscle to put it in a turn, but they deal with these bumps and kind of rutted roads really well. Dusty. Yeah, it's a nice bike, comfortable, it handles the turns well. I have no complaints about it. It's I like the handlebars, they're very natural. The position I'm sitting in is very natural. The reach to the bars is very nice. It puts me at a slight lean into the wind, which is actually a good thing at this speed, because you know, you want to be a little bit leaned into the wind. You don't want to be being blown back. But for some reason, this big headlight and the tank and the fact that you're sitting in the bike, it does the fact that you're sitting in the bike as opposed to on it does kind of keep the wind off you. It's like this big headlight. Oh yeah, no problem. No problem being up to speed. These things are fast. For a beginner, this is plenty entertaining. Yeah, no wind on my chest. Very little wind on my chest. So what's happening here, this headlight is just blasting the air apart in front of me. Beautiful day to ride. The display is plenty visible. It's close to me. It's got a fuel gauge. It's got speedo, tach, time, clock. That's all you need. I mean, a gear indicator would be nice. Like I said, it's such a smooth bike that it's hard to tell when you're in 6th gear. You might be in 3rd or, well, 4th, 5th. Down in 4th, at higher speeds, I did feel a little bit more buzz. The seating position is not super cruiserish. My knees are quite bent. So this is the thing. Like, some people like the really feet forward cruising seating position. I personally like the more of the mid-control seating position. Puts me more in control of the bike. And it does sound mean. Alright, so the Rebel 500. What a nice little bike. I gotta say, it's a throwback to the olden days of motorcycles, where motorcycles didn't have a whole lot of electronic devices on them. So this thing really just has no traction control. There are no rider modes. It doesn't really need those things because it's a smaller bike with a smaller engine, and it's got unintimidating power. And so we've got a pretty simple bike. Ah, beautiful. Look at those hills. Look at these places. And it's lovely around here. Well, little bunny by the side of the road. I hope the camera caught that. So the first thing you notice about the Rebel 500 is its looks. And I think personally Honda hit the nail on the head here. So how does this bike look? Well, it's kind of, you know, there's so many subgenres of motorcycles, but it's a cruiser, it's a bobber, and it looks really good. I mean, to me, they've kind of captured, you know, Harley's been doing this with their Sportsters, with the big fat wheels and the small tank, that kind of look, the chopped fenders, all that stuff. So the bike looks clean, the lines are clean. It's got a low, kind of mean, muscular stance. It looks a lot bigger displacement than it is. When you park it beside other cruisers, it looks like it belongs with the big boys. It is physically smaller, but the big fat wheels give it kind of a more imposing presence. And yeah, it looks pretty custom. It looks pretty nice. So definitely, if you are looking for a stylish ride, and it doesn't look like a Harley, and that's one thing that I really, in the past, this has plagued Japanese manufacturers a lot, where they try to make their bikes look more like Harleys. This looks like, you know, a take on a cruiser, like a little muscle cruiser, but not trying to copy anybody. Honda's just being kind of authentic Honda, and I really like that. So let's talk about the handling of the Honda Rebel 500. Let's take a break from talking about the handling because there's a lot of loose gravel on this hill, and I just want to make sure that I do this hill properly, because sometimes you get a truck coming down this hill fast going the other way. Alright, we're good. Yeah, it is easier to ride these roads when they're a little wet. So, the handling of the Honda. Well, there's some good and some bad here. So, no cruiser is going to handle like a sports bike, but the Rebel handles pretty well, I have to say. It's got plenty of cornering clearance. Trust me on this one. I lost the part of the ride where I took it through some turns, unfortunately. I don't know, the GoPro just didn't turn on when we were going through the curvy section, but I was surprised at how far it would actually lean over at speed without scraping anything, and that's a good thing. So you can definitely hustle this thing around corners, unlike some of the big cruisers that you know, you get to the first corner and the party's over because you're basically scraping everything but the headlight when you throw it into a nice tight corner. The Honda does not have that problem. A beginning rider will find that this is definitely a bike you can have some fun on and be entertained on. The steering, well, I like light steering myself. You know, I'm a big fan of light steering. The big front wheel of the Honda looks really good, but one thing that big fat front wheels do is they slow down the steering and make it a little heavier. Now, this is not really a problem for most Rebel owners. I've seen some small people ride Rebels and they are completely fine with the steering and they're not bothered at all by it, but it is a little heavier steering than a bike with a thinner front wheel. So that is definitely a factor when you're choosing a bike. If you want it to steer quickly and light, this is not the bike that will do that. It requires a little bit more muscle to steer it into a corner, but once you're in the corner, it handles it very well. What I do like about the fat front wheel especially is the fact that for city riding, it is really good at rolling over certain obstacles, especially streetcar tracks. Guys, streetcar tracks are the bane of the urban rider a lot of the time, and the fatter your front wheel, the better your bike handles streetcar tracks, especially in the wet. Overall, I thought the bike handled quite well. I thought that I was in control. The handlebars are narrow, but they still give you enough leverage to throw the bike into corners. I didn't really find any problems with the handling. It handles better than most cruisers. Alright, so let's talk about the Rebel's engine now. We got a 471cc parallel twin with around 47 horsepower, and it is quite a good little engine, to be honest with you. Plenty of power, but when you are at highway speed, let's say 110, 120 kilometers an hour, 70 miles an hour, in that neighborhood, you might want to make a quick pass, and that's when this bike is going to be a little lacking on the bigger displacement bikes. You have to work the gearbox, and you have to be a little bit more patient, because you are not going to just blow by a big, 18-wheeler or a car that's moving in front of you and make a quick pass. This bike requires a little bit of work and concentration and planning when you're passing, and that's where the smaller bikes kind of surrender an advantage to the larger bikes in this segment. All right, let's see how this engine sounds. Sounds pretty good. Alright, so with that, let's talk about the sound of the Honda Rebel, because I was quite pleasantly surprised about the sound of that stock engine and the stock pipe. That thing sounds quite mean and kind of it definitely sounds brawnier than the small CCs would indicate. It sounds like a big bike making kind of a deep growly noise. Who's this bike for? Well, it's for a shorter rider who wants to use it for several different things, but mostly probably for city riding and for commuting. Why do I say city riding? Well, it can ride over many different obstacles on pavement, like streetcar tracks and things like that. Is it ideal for commuting in the city? Well, the one thing that it lacks that I like to have for city commuting is it lacks a taller seat height. I like being nice and tall in the city so I can look over the cars and so I can be seen by the cars. Oh, look at that farm. It's a nice little farm in there. So yeah, personally I like a higher seat, but if you're a shorter rider and you don't have that option, then you definitely can thrive on this bike, commuting to work, riding in the city, running errands, you know, going to the coffee shop and going for an occasional ride in the country with your friends or by yourself, or however you like to ride. Could you tour on this bike? Yeah, I think you could. I was informed that GV makes a nice tall windshield for it, so you can definitely... Whoa, holy sh**. That's why you stand, boys and girls. The front end started plowing. I gotta keep this party standing here, through here. It's a little wet and it's a little sandy with thick gravel. Yeah, you could tour on it. It's definitely, it could be comfortable long distance. Put a nice tall windshield on. It's got places where you can mount saddlebags. It's got places where you can mount highway pegs, and it's got way enough power to sit on the highway all day and not blink. The only thing it lacks for touring is range. It's got an 11-liter gas tank, so even though it's very fuel efficient, you're going to need to be fuel efficient to get far down the highway. You're going to be stopping for fuel, you know, fairly often, maybe every couple of 100 kilometers or so. Personally, I think if you're looking for a cruiser that is unique, that's not trying to be a Harley, that can get you anywhere, that you can use for almost anything, and that looks good, and that you know, sand, deep sand, deep sand. Deep sand. All right, deep sand still. If you're looking for a cruiser like that, this is the bike for you. This is a great bike. It will surprise a lot of bigger bikes with its power, and it will probably be it will probably be very reliable. It's a Honda, and that's what you get with a Honda. You get reliability, you get a really good dealer network, you get a good warranty, all of that stuff. Look at this place. This is gorgeous. And there's a nice little gorge over there. This is why we ride motorcycles, to find places like this. Alright guys, so Different Spokes signing off. Please continue to check out the channel for more wonderful bike reviews and for all the beautiful rides around this area and the adventures that we're gonna do. Thanks for watching. Keep the, what's the cliche term? Keep the shiny side up, rubber side down, and may the spokes be with you.